Mountain Green and welcome back to the channel. My life has changed in very unexpected ways in the last 6 weeks. All for the good, nothing bad, but it's made it so working on this is just not feasible really until this summer. But unexpectedly, I now have today free. So I am trying to accomplish in one day replacing the torque converter in my AW4. I'm gonna explain why during time lapse, because I don't have the time to waste right now. So I'm gonna move the camera and get to work.
Ever since I got this swap running, I've had a couple of issues with the transmission. Around idle, I've always felt like the TDI engine struggled to idle with this transmission. The BEW TDI likes to idle around 910 RPM, but whenever I would put this transmission into reverse or drive, idle was closer to about 870 RPM. The other issue I was noticing was whenever I engaged torque lockup in the CompuShift software, I was seeing a drop in RPM of 6 to 800 RPM, which is almost like going into another gear. For reference, depending on your application, the average RPM drop when you engage torque lockup is anywhere between 2 and 300 RPM. Now, when I installed all of this originally, I installed a heavy-duty but stock stall, supposedly brand new torque converter. The mystery in all of this was the torque converter, and I decided it was going to be worth the day trying to pull the transmission and reinstall it to remove that heavy-duty stall torque converter. I actually still have, and that's what I'm trying to install, the stock torque converter that came with the AW4 automatic that's currently installed in my Wrangler. The theory being it would give me an apples-to-apples comparison to see if that was the issue that I was having with both torque lockup and my idle.
I have the transmission down. What I'm gonna do now, and I realized I could do this, which is why the camera is where it is, I am gonna swap the torque converters without pulling the transmission out from underneath the Jeep. It's gonna save me a ton of time. It's just gonna make the process faster because it's also tilted and everything in the correct angle to mount back up to the TDI engine. So I'm gonna be working on that. And this, by the way, is the torque converter we're going to. This was the torque converter that was installed on that transmission when I bought it. It has about 5,000 miles on it. So theoretically, it should make a difference for what I'm currently seeing. So with that said, because I am burning time, I'm gonna get back to work. All right, everyone, it is after 8 o'clock at this point and I have run out of time. I didn't realize my camera had died. So what you missed is I hadn't seated the torque converter correctly. I had to actually spin by hand the input splines on the AW4 so the torque converter would go all the way in. Once I did that and moved some hosing and other stuff out of the way on the backside of the engine, I was able to get the transmission to just slide right up there like it fit perfectly. Got the cross member reinstalled. I have the Rubicon transfer case installed. I have one nut holding the transfer case in place, which for now is fine. I have not installed the bolts to hold the torque converter to the flex plate. I'll do that soon. So yeah, I'm gonna wash up. The other thing is I don't have a heater in the shop right now and the temperature has plummeted and I am freezing. But I wanted to get this to the point where everything was being supported under its own weight. So anyway, I'll come back to this very soon. All right, so it is about 6 weeks later from the clip that you just watched. And to show just how out of this I am, I have this morning and early afternoon free. Decided, you know what, the weather is perfect. I have both garage doors open. I came up immediately after breakfast, had my camera with me, but put on some music, I grabbed some wrenches, and I just went to work. And I'm almost to the point of test firing the engine, and I just realized, oh crap, I haven't recorded anything. But on the flip side, I was like, wow, this is going really fast. It's going so fast because I'm not filming it. But anyway, quick recap. I have reinstalled the torque converter bolts, I've reinstalled the starter, I've re-hooked up the transmission cooling lines, and I've hooked up all the electronics for the transmission and both the transmission and transfer case shifter. What I'm going to do now, again off camera, is just triple check everything. I'm going to check all the fluids, all the wiring, all the bolts, make sure everything is tight and in order and where it should be, and there's nothing hitting anything that shouldn't. And then we will do a test fire. So that said, I'll be back in a moment. All right, so good news. It fired right up, which is always amazing. Bad news, it's low on transmission fluid. So I've got to find my transmission fluid, put more in it. And then since everything seems to sound okay, I'm going to work on getting the drive shafts in. Once I have all of that figured out, I think we're going to go on a test drive. So all I've done is back the Jeep out of the shop, and I locked up the shop because I'm about to go for a test drive. And I'm noticing a couple of things immediately right off the bat. I put it in gear and it barely drops RPM now. It used to plummet in RPM. Okay, I have driven it less than a 1/16 of a mile. This torque converter is night and day different. I mean, I don't have to give it the throttle I used to. I used to be at a constant 50% throttle to drive this thing. I'm barely on the throttle, maybe an 1/8, definitely not a 1/4. I'm making way less boost, but I have to give it way less throttle to hold speed. Temperatures look good, EGTs look good. Actually, EGTs look great. I'm cruising at like 490-ish degrees Fahrenheit. Now, my probe is after the turbo just because of the way the setup is. So you can figure before the turbo, it's another 100, 150 degrees warmer at most. So even then, I'm looking at a temperature of 650 degrees cruising. It's quieter, I think. Oh, it's significantly quieter. Now, the other thing I should say is this is the default tune on the CompuShift for the AW4. I'm just barely getting on the throttle, about 12 PSI. We're at about 600 degrees now, but the speed limit is 55. And truthfully, I don't know what gear I'm in. I think it's 4th gear. On this tune, the torque converter never locks. But I did that on purpose because this is what I consider a safe tune. I know what to expect. I don't have to baby it. Was half throttle. And that half throttle is what I used to have to maintain on the old torque converter. So now
when it's in gear at idle, it doesn't drop nearly as much as it used to, which is a good thing. But now to get it going, I don't have to give it nearly the throttle I used to. This drives so much better than it used to.
That's all I have for this video. Unfortunately, my original outro I had made, I somehow lost in trying to put it onto my computer. But this swap is actually running really well, and I'm really happy with how the torque converter is working with this engine. However, I'm not sure if you noticed earlier in the video, I kept looking at my gauges. I still have a cooling issue, which is something I'm going to address in my next video. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again sometime soon. Goodbye.